They released their first album in 1972 and would take 2 years to finish their last one in 1979. Join us for Eagles, The Long Run. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. The most fun I have each and every week, Eric. This is like, in a crazy world, it's my oasis. It's where I come to, chill
You
out.
look well. You kind of look like you have an oasis going there. You got all your stuff around you. You got lots of beautiful
lights,
wall, the
got
lights.
The mood lighting.
Yeah,
I try and set the tone to make it
right. And I love coming to my comfy couch.
Yeah, it's fun. We have fun doing this, and that's the most important part. I think is we love talking about music. We love talking about movies. We love geeking out, and if you're new to our podcast and joining us for the first time, buckle up, Buttercup, because we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to give you some stats. We'll give you some trivia. We'll give you our opinions about it. But either way, we guarantee you that you're going to have a good time with it. And we invite you to, after this episode, go check the back catalog. There is another Eagles episode way back in the back room. You have to move some boxes to the side, but Hotel California is back there. We did that. We did that in 2021. We did it in year one. I wanted to do the long. I don't know if you remember. I wanted to do the long run, but then I had a person that listens to the podcast say, "No, you got to do Hotel California."
Yeah, I remember that.
Hotel California. Yep. So, but now we're getting finally to the long run. So,
and thank you for saying Eagles instead of the Eagles.
We went through that. Yeah,
you remembered.
I did, and I thought about it, and it's so tempting. Go back to our Hotel California episode.
I know. Yeah,
we went into the use of with the group Eagles, especially if you look at the cover. I should have brought it out. I have it, but if you look at the cover for the long run, it just says Eagles Long Run. We won't belabor it. It's very comfortable to say the Eagles.
Yeah,
and we will probably do that in this episode, not knowing, but we will try our hardest just to say Eagles, because
we have to. Oh, yeah. We should be doing. Too bad we didn't have some whole row of shots in front of us. We could have been throwing them back and see how many times we get. Who says it first?
This is a Jameson. It's called a Jameson Orange Spritz. It comes in a can.
Yeah,
Jameson whiskey with orange.
Yeah, they make a ginger.
Yeah, I can certainly take a swig of that each time.
Yeah,
I'm going to take a swig of it without, even if we don't.
It's water.
It's water.
Drinking water.
It's water, Eric. All right, let's get going with this. We've got this is a great album. It's what we'll get into. We'll start the show. Let's start the show, and then we'll get into it. But first, if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. Leave a comment. What do you think about the long run? Does it compare with Hotel California? The comparisons are inevitable because of personnel and musicality where Eagles were at the time. So drop a comment too. Also, if you're watching us, if you're checking us out on Facebook or Instagram, go ahead and let us know what you thought of the long run. Is it a worthy successor, or is it just a limp to the finish? So here we go. This was released in September 1979, produced by Bill Szymczyk.
I think it's Seismic.
Seismic?
Seismic?
I'm going to go Seismic. That's I'm going to keep it easy for me. There were 3 singles released from this album. Heartache Tonight hit number 1. Yes, Glenn Frey.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just so if you don't listen to the Hotel California episode, Eric and I are Team Frey. We went over that the last time. We were both Team Glenn Frey. The second single was The Long Run, the title track that hit number 8. I Can't Tell You Why was the third single that also hit number 8. I'm surprised. That seems like it seems like out of these 3 singles, that seems to be the most enduring one, right? Like
absolutely,
that people kind of, or you'll hear. This actually won 1 Grammy. Heartache Tonight, best rock performance by a duo or group with vocal. So that's very nice. Went to number 1 on Billboard. 7 times platinum. Another beast, from the West in this case. Another Slam Dunk from the Eagles, probably, one of the most popular American bands of the 70s that were a, as I said in the open, Eric, a beast of the 70s, a creature of the 70s, formed in 72 and they were done by 79. Yeah. So 7 years, 6 albums, and an indelible mark on popular music and crossover music and
That's amazing.
Country music. They were hitting country charts. They were crossing over. They're not the same Southern rock that Lynyrd Skynyrd or the Allman Brothers are, because they also morphed into a straight up rock band as well.
Yeah, you mentioned 7 years, 6 albums. That's amazing, because consider the touring that they did, especially with Hotel California. That was a long stretch. So it's almost an album a year. So we're that's and certainly this is no slouch of a record.
Yeah, and each song had hits on it. Each song had at least usually probably two hits, maybe a radio hit and a album oriented rock hit or any of those. So there was plenty. There really wasn't a dud. Maybe Desperado might have been the closest, or on the border. But that even had a couple that had Desperado, and it had a couple other songs on it. So every album had something, and every album, they were getting better or stronger. They may have had some peaks. Maybe Desperado was a valley, and then they peak again.
I think it was a valley because they were trying to do something perhaps like other bands were doing. I think Desperado was meant to be sort of a concept record, if I'm not mistaken, or a recurring theme or something going on in the record, and it's just they're just not that kind of band. They
tried.
They tried, but they're geared for they're hit makers. I mean, that's that's their legacy, I think.
Yeah, a five tool band, meaning everybody could sing, even though Don Felder didn't really get any kind of vocal high solos for the most part. They all wrote. Felder was capable of singing, which was great. And one of their, which we love, is there are no harmonies like Eagles. The blend of surprised that they're not related, because of the blend that they achieved is so iconic and so clean.
Yeah, so clean and so anything from like full on, chorus of vocals to a very nuanced harmony as well, especially between, you consider Don Henley and Glenn Frey together, just together, or Henley and Schmidt, or and they weren't they weren't an overly like produced band either, so it was
and considering that they had personnel changes, it didn't really, I think it probably made their sound even better, because when Bernie Leadon left, Joe Walsh came in with the intent from the group to have a harder rock edge.
Rock it out. Yeah.
And Joe Walsh was a known entity, a vocalist on his own, so he was able to slide in. Randy Meisner, when we catch up with Eagles here, Randy Meisner leaves in June of 1977. He's kind of had enough. So what do they do is, they get Timothy B. Schmidt, who was from Poco. Oddly enough, Randy Meisner left Poco to join Eagles, and Timothy B. Schmidt took his place. So Timothy B. Schmidt is always the bridesmaid. It seems he's following wherever Randy Meisner leaves, Timothy B. Schmidt slides in. But everybody, as beloved as Randy, everybody loves Randy Meisner. Take it to the limit. He's got a soaring, angelic voice as well.
Yeah. Unique.
It seemed like Timothy B. Schmidt was a 1-for-1 replacement. It almost like they didn't skip a beat. They got another tool player, meaning he could sing, he writes, and can play. It seems like the group was really good at, when they did make replacements, at finding the right fit, finding people that fit what they were doing. It wasn't that thing of, this guy was on for one album and then we sacked him because he wasn't good. It's like they got Joe Walsh, and it seems like I wrote here, and I'll ask you, with the arrival of Joe Walsh, it seems, and then obviously we get Hotel California and the massive hit that was. Were Eagles just getting restarted, or was it already over?
It's a good question, actually, depending on your point of view.
by,
If you
by
if you're a
that
big
time.
Yeah, if you're a big fan of the earlier stuff, which is decidedly more acoustic, more sort of Midwestern, sort of
Yeah,
Americana,
countrified.
countrified a little bit. But yeah, I mean, bringing Walsh in definitely gave it that sort of, and I think it kind of, really kind of amped the guitar sound as well. They were plugging in. Glenn
Yeah,
Frey was plugging in, and not just vocal harmonies, but you also guitar harmonies.
yeah.
And
And that
just
slide. I mean, Joe Walsh
oh
brings the
yeah,
slide. He brings a sound that Bernie Leadon didn't have.
right. He definitely added
Yeah,
something to the
we-
group, and they knew
yeah,
it. I mean, they knew what they were doing, bringing them in.
yeah.
I'm
It
sure.
really
Yeah,
filled out the band. It made them that much more dangerous. I think
yeah.
you know what I mean. Like
Gave them an edge.
they became so much more formidable
Right.
when you add the random element of Joe Walsh. But they were very much able to contain him
Yeah.
and leverage his strengths in the right way for
Mhm.
Eagles. And yeah, this is one of the most any lineup of this group is a classic lineup. And I just love it. They were just so great. But they were all drugging up, doing what everybody did in the 70s. I mean,
Of
that was
course, the success, the excess. I mean, come on.
I think the pettiness is what did them in. I think things got really petty, and we've talked about it in the Hotel California with Don Felder.
Yeah.
It was petty things that really splintered them. And Glenn Frey was like, I've had enough of this. This bullshit. I'm done with it. It's time. And they all had admitted, even Don Henley, we were deep in drugs, drug addiction. So that makes for a powder keg of emotion. So when Randy Meisner leaves in 77, they bring in Timothy B. Schmidt. Their plan was to record a double album. The Long Run was supposed to be a double album. You know what the problem was, Eric?
What?
They didn't have any songs.
No. So that's what I was going to say. That I was wondering what.
The greatest intentions, like we want to do a double album, but there were no songs.
There were no songs written. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Good on you. You want to do a double album, but you don't have any material. Don Henley said they were totally burnt out at this point. It's like we were running on fumes because, like you said, the touring, the popularity, the demands, and their incessant touring, especially around Hotel California.
Do you think that if they had waited a little bit to get back into the studio, were they pressured to do so? You feel, or was it?
I think we've talked about it a lot. We always talk about the breakneck pace that 70s artists worked at. All of them would have. How many episodes have we done where they put out two, like Zeppelin, they put out 2 albums in 1 year, and Kiss put out 2 albums in 1 year. It seems like that was just the pace that you worked at. You continually created, and that was the grind. That was part of the factory of the 70s was pumping out albums and going on tour, and it wasn't an idea to take a break. Now it's a thing. Yeah, we're going to take 2 years off, and I've got a side project, or I'm going to do a solo record, or I'm just going to not do anything. That was unheard of. It was you're here to feed the machine and create product, and if you don't have a new album out on the shelves, they're going to forget about you. So it's almost like a fear type thing too, right?
So what do? They make a greatest hits.
Yeah,
they get the greatest hits out there to to kind of fill in or a live album, statement.
Fill in the gap and
the gaps. Right. Yep.
The greatest hits #1 is recognized as the biggest selling album of all time. On December 7th, 1999, the Recording Industry of America honored the group with the best selling album of the century for their greatest hits 1971 through 1975. So that was in the 1900s. It's weird to say the 1900s.
It's in every jukebox.
That's what it was
in America at the time. I mean, still is, I'm sure, but
it absolutely has.
You go to every bar, there's Eagles.
It's one of those ones that anybody can listen to, but there are people that dislike them. So the Eagles regroup in 1977. We're going to get an album out. We hope it'll be a double album. It ends up taking 18 months. They end up recording in 5 different studios. And they got 10 songs out of it, and one song was actually already recycled. So yeah, you make a good point in asking, should they have taken a break? It probably would have helped. Had they, it's hard to say, because when you watch that Eagles documentary too, Fry and Henley are very much like horrible bosses. They treat, everybody's an employee to them, and
pretty much
you're going to get paid less.
It was so interesting too, because we knew nothing. I remember distinctly, like as kids, when we really got into them, we knew nothing about the band. There was not really much out there. There was no documentaries made then. There was no, I don't recall any like books. Of course, Zeppelin already had books out the doors. Everybody had their story was already out there and published, tell all kind of thing. And Fleetwood Mac, of course, they didn't need to do any. I mean, you knew that was their reputation. But with Eagles, it was just they kind of wore it close to the chest. And I don't know if it's a good thing or bad thing, but when you find out years later everything that went down and all the turmoil, wow, it's surprising, because they hit it well. You wouldn't know it. But personnel changes, of course, but you wonder why, Randy Meisner left. Why though? He was so great, or Bernie Ledden. I could see probably why he would left. I think he wanted to be a little bit more sort of, he was doing things like Journey to the Sorcerer and
he wanted to stay in the lane that they were in that southern countrified lane. And
don't think he wanted to be such a huge success. I don't think he cared much about that as much as, say, Glenn Frey did. Glenn Frey wanted to be a hit maker. He was he wanted to play rock and roll, and that's exactly what they accomplished.
Yeah.
So
and it does, you're right. On these albums, not one of them has ever been called like messy, like production wise. Like they always delivered, no matter what was going on behind the scenes, kind of like Fleetwood Mac.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is there, but it doesn't get in the way of the music. It's not like, there was a shitty production job because they were so coked up or whatever. It's
clean, it's straightforward. Very professional.
The vocals, you never say, oh my God, what were they on this album? Because the vocals don't sound right. The backing vocals, they always came correct when it was time to deliver the product. And I think that's probably why people didn't realize how hedonistic they were and what they were doing. Because it's like when it was time to work, they put the suit on, they put the tie on, shaved, and you would never know. They show up for work and you would never know.
Yeah.
But behind the scenes was all that. This album, this is my favorite. This is my favorite Eagles album. This is one of the first CDs I ever bought too. When CDs first came out, I got the long run. I'm like, grabbed it and listened to it.
Yep.
I think, is it fair to say that this is not Hotel California 2, but it takes place in the same universe? It feels like this album takes place if this was like a cinematic universe. It feels like the long run takes place in the same universe as Hotel California, but it's not trying to be a sequel.
That's a fair statement. I think they were, there's a couple songs on the record that are definitely a product of those years of the late 70s when, people were kind of doing, trying to emulate the disco thing, for example, like the certain rhythms on this record that I like a lot. And they're trying something unique,
like Disco Strangler. Are you talking about, or
Disco Strangler? And that's an amazing. There's some really great rhythm stuff happening on that song, and which you never you're not used to hearing that, But I think with Hotel California that they made their big statement. I think that was a heavy, the song itself was epic. The Last Resort I always loved. That was sort of like that had gravitas to it. This album, I felt like they just I don't know if they were having fun because apparently it was very difficult to make.
Yeah, they all. Yeah, Don Henley was like, "This is the worst experience of
It's
my life."
like laborious and maybe that shows. I don't know because the songs just are more decidedly more pop and just they
Yeah,
feel like they're looser and they're having fun, but apparently that wasn't the case making it.
yeah,
But again, you never know it,
yeah.
because the
They hide it.
songs
They
just
hide it
yeah,
well.
right.
They
And
hide it really well. And yeah, Disco Strangler. Yeah, you're right. This album has different textures that they were fooling with.
mhm,
And the long run was inspired by that. The long run is a direct kind of commentary on people saying, "Oh, the Eagles are passé and they're done.
mhm,
Disco is here, punk is here," and that's when the lyric comes out. Who's going to make it? We'll find out in the long run.
yeah,
Turns out the Eagles. Turns out Eagles didn't make it. They actually
yeah,
imploded after this album.
yeah,
So it was a self unfulfilling prophecy. But that was their statement of everybody's so hot on disco and these new music forms. We'll see. We'll see what happens. When
mhm,
all is said and done, we'll see who's still standing. And rock and roll did survive, and disco didn't, and punk came and went, and disco came and went.
mhm,
But rock morphed a little in the '80s and still kept going.
yeah,
Um, I can't tell you why. Timothy B. Schmidt wrote most of the song, or enough of it that when he presented it to Glenn Frey and Don Henley, like, yeah, there's something here we can do with it.
mhm,
And Don Henley is Henley and Frey are songwriters on like 9 out of these 10 songs. They had their hands one way or another in the recipes. It's
I
the only one
wonder
in the city because obviously.
just how much though. Is it like the Lennon McCartney thing or you know what I mean? Like
Apparently they take these songs and apparently with I can't
yeah.
tell you why that Timothy B. Schmidt said like there was enough. It wasn't a whole lot there, but I had enough of the song where they took it
Mhm,
and finished it off. So it seems like they have an ear for it and saying, okay, we can take this, and they knew what Eagles formula was
mhm.
and
I
how to best bring it out. And Timothy B. Schmidt's vocal on that is you're not going to get, maybe Don Henley could come close to it, but not as angelic as Timothy B. Schmidt's vocal
It's
on
a gorgeous song. I mean, it really is. It's not a heavy song by no means, but it's just a really nice ballad, as they do.
it. Yeah,
All their ballads are great, but
it's like New Kid in Town. It's like the long run version of New Kid in Town.
yeah, I mean, it just has an atmosphere to it. It's
Mm.
somewhat, sad, but it's somewhat sexy at the same time. It has a sort of bluesy kind of approach, and Glenn Frey really can't say enough about him on this record. I mean,
Yeah.
he really shines. Whereas I think Henley was more. Uh, he was, Hotel California was decidedly more John Henley, I think.
Yeah.
But
Well, he
Glenn
gets a lot of
Frey,
vocals on this too. He's all over. Henley
he
was
does, but Glenn Frey comes out with, he's playing keyboards on this
yeah,
record, more guitar. That's all him.
yeah.
On I can't tell you why, which I always thought it was Felder or Walsh because it
Mhm,
has a slight, there's a slight twang to the guitar, like almost not slide, but it could go there.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, and just the way it it flows and the way the way it fades out too. That guitar just keeps going, and
Yeah, it's just
you're just
a great good. It's a
it's
great
a great
nice
track. Yeah,
measured guitar solo that matches the mellowness of the song.
and it's simple,
Yeah,
but yet it's perfection in every.
yeah,
It's very well put together. Um, yeah, you really can't go wrong with that song.
yeah.
I mean, I hear it all the time, and I always turning it up. I'm always singing to it. It's a song that just kind of stops you in your tracks, and when you hear it, and you hear it every day, practically, it
Yeah.
could be the most played. Like I think you mentioned it before.
That
I mean,
and Lion Eyes are probably the 2,
yeah,
and
uh,
they bookend their career basically.
yeah,
And then we get their final number 1, and I'm so glad that Glenn Frey snatched it with Heartache Tonight.
mm,
I love Glenn Frey in this in his it's not a shouting voice, but it's a, his raspy voice.
Yeah.
Same thing with the textures. It's got the hand claps and the stomping, and they set that beat up, and then all of them are singing together. They sing the first verse together, and then Glenn Frey comes in, and it's funny because him and JD Souther kind of had the song written, and then they called up their good friend Bob Seger on the phone and said, we can't get the chorus. And they told, I think, as it goes, they told Bob Seger the name of the song, and he just screeched out the chorus, is going to be a heartache tonight. And that's it. That was it. That's it.
And it definitely has Seger vibes to it.
Yeah, if you listen to the way Glenn Frey sings those choruses,
I think that's the reason and ever since then, Frey would have like in his solo work that he would have that same, he's not the quiet, timid guy like he was, the timid voice that he had. And back in the earlier stuff here, now he's coming out.
It's not Tequila Sunrise, Glenn Frey. This is something meeting the moment, because you've got the guitar work in there. I mean, this is probably the hardest rocking that they get, and maybe that they ever got, is Heartache Tonight. And I just love it's so perfectly matched. The music with the vocal, and like you said, it's not the typical singing Glenn Frey. It's the wailing, rocking Glenn Frey. But oddly enough, his first solo album would kind of go back to the other Glenn
the
Frey.
Tender stuff, but there was a good couple tracks on that record. No Fun Allowed. That's what we're referring to.
And then he sings, we get him on Teenage Jail. We don't get a lot of Glenn Frey. Even on Hotel California, he only had the one. He had New Kid in Town, and that was it. So he kind of that's part of it's a blessing and a curse when you've got this many vocalists, because you got Joe Walsh also. You got so you're going to give them, it's almost like the George Harrison syndrome. They kind of each get a song, but Don Henley gets like 5 or 6, but everybody else gets 1.
And I don't know what it is about Don Henley's voice that is necessarily better over the others. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always loved his voice. I always admired his voice. I mean, I always tried to, if I ever tried to sing, it tried to sound like it's not that easy to get that, that pitch and that range.
Yeah, he's got a particular tone to his voice.
But he's got that, but he also has a slight strain to the voice. If you know what I'm saying, like there's maybe that's the reason. Maybe it's because its voice sounds a little bit weathered,
like Boys of Summer. It sounds like he's straining when he sings that.
There are certain so it sounds, it has that sort of like slightly more dirty feel, I guess you could say, lack of a better term.
He's reaching for the notes,
right? Whereas
not coming easily.
Somebody like Timothy B. Schmidt is pure and smooth and just that high pitch, and even Glenn Frey has that purity to his voice as well. But Don Henley has that sort of I don't know what it is. It's a dirtier voice. It's a smokier voice, and just sort of but to say that the reason that why he has so many more solo, like more vocal duties than everybody else, who knows? Maybe that's just the dynamic. The range of vocalists you have, like such high end, and but you know what? Henley can go there too, though. So it's I don't know. I don't know the reason. Maybe he's just
a utility guy.
Well, maybe it's just like we said. It's like I'm the boss. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I got clout, or I don't know. Whatever the case may be, I often think about that. The one thing that they did say when they broke up, too many chiefs.
Yeah.
That quote is always, every time I listen to them, that's the one thing that you always knew that meant. Now you know what that meant.
But it was a cage of their own making, because they brought on Joe Walsh, who was already an established artist, lyricist, vocalist, and writer.
Oh yeah.
And then you bring in Timothy B. Schmidt. So if you want that, you're going out and getting these hired guns that are really good. You have to expect then there's got to be some concessions, but they weren't willing to make that.
Do you think though that bringing Joe Walsh in, I think we might have perhaps posed this question in Hotel California, but
Can I ask it again?
do you think he should have been like he should have done more? He should have been, being
I
that
think he
he
did
was
enough.
probably the most established artist,
Yeah.
with
He
James
also had a
Gang, and
he also had a solo career, so
that's right.
simultaneously. So this was, I think, was a good outlet for him to kind of be part of a group, get a song or two,
Mm.
tour with them, and then he could go do his crazy Joe Walshy stuff on his solo album. So it was a very unique arrangement they had with him that they didn't
That's a good
demand
point. Yeah.
full kneel down fealty to Eagles. It was kind of join us. We'd love to have you. We're looking for a more rock sound, and he was still doing his solo
Yeah.
work,
Mm-hmm.
which leads us to we'll go there is In the City, which is a very interesting.
I love that song. Yeah.
Very interesting entry into this because Joe Walsh had recorded it in 1979 for the movie The Warriors.
Mm.
And he had recorded it, and Don Henley and Glenn Frey heard it, and they're like, we actually kind of dig that. We'd like to put it on the album. So they went ahead and re-recorded it, which I think they did do a better version. The versions are very close. Joe Walsh's vocal is almost spot on.
Mm-hmm.
You would be hard pressed to say they didn't just take it, but he probably did redo it.
But it didn't have those harmonies, though.
But it didn't have Eagles harmonies
and soaring, high pitched harmonies.
Yeah,
in the chorus that's what makes the song for me. Yeah,
yeah. The original Joe Walsh version sounds it's a little thinner. The the backing vocals are there, but they're kind of thin. There's not a lot of behind them. But this whole Eagles version of In the City just has a thicker, denser sound, which is a fuller rock sound.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you've got the backing vocals, which brings you to a whole other level. But it's very interesting that it was already recorded pretty much the same year, had come out, wasn't a giant hit. Everybody knows this version. I think Eagles version is popular because I didn't realize he did that until a few years ago. It wasn't long ago. It was a few years ago. I'm like, it came up on Spotify. And I'm like, this sounds weird. Like, what is this? And I'm looking at the display, and it's like from the Warriors. I'm like, what? And it's just Joe Walsh. I'm like, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. They plucked it and said, yeah. And it makes sense now. Now that we know that they wanted to do a double album and didn't have any material, it's very easy for them to say, you know what, we'll take that.
We'll take what we can get. Yeah.
And
apparently there were a lot of several tracks that did not make the album. Yeah. And I think one critic wrote that you wonder, because he wasn't a fan of the record.
Yeah.
He goes, if they had more tracks that they left off, you could only imagine what those how worse they were than the songs on this record. And you're like, wow, that's But
I don't agree. No. I mean, the opening track, The Long Run, was one of my favorite songs, and I have some proof to tell you how far back it goes. And you might remember this, but I met Don Henley in 1991.
Yes,
at a book signing, and I still have the book. And when I asked him, you go up to the desk. It was at Walden Books. Remember Walden Books?
Walden Books, yeah.
So you go up and they sign the book, and he's like, what do you want me to write? And for those on YouTube, you're going to hopefully be able to see that. And it says, to Dean, kind of bent, but we ain't breaking. Don Henley, 1991. So this is what, 33 years old. And I remember distinctly when I said to him, can you write that? He kind of looked at me. He's kind of, because at the time, Eagles were very much a non-entity and very taboo. But I was kind of like, I think it fit with, the book is about Walden Wood and conservation and eco-centric issues. And I thought, well, I thought that quote would kind of summed up what was going on at the time. And he wrote it. And I was like, cool, Don Henley. I didn't tell him at the time I was Team Fry. I just I let him have his day in the sun and let him think, that it was all good. But it's King of Hollywood. What about that? Is that Me Too before Me Too? That's like Harvey Weinstein before it came to light. It is literally, it's so to listen to King of Hollywood is so creepy.
It's one of the biggest, one of the things that the critics say about this record is that it's Eagles at their most mean.
Yeah.
And heated and sort of like controversial in a way, like just sort of like really commenting. Not that the commentary is that deep, but it's it
It's
goes
to the
there. It
point.
serves
Yeah.
its
To the
purpose.
point.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. I
no,
kind of,
but that riff, such a
yeah.
great, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it's unsettling to listen to it.
Mhm.
You're very cute, and what are you willing to do? Are you willing to be, if you're nice to me type of stuff? It's like, which leads to, I wrote down that there's an overall, I think, cynical feeling to the album. There's not really
Mhm.
any happy songs. It's not that every song is a downer, but there's that kind of dark cloud
Mhm.
that's over all the songs. They all have, teenage jail, and they have like a sinister feel to them.
Yeah.
Uh, those
I think they
shoes.
were commenting on the things at the time. You consider what was happening in the, maybe not so much in the West. Well, I'm sure, but drugs, and when you consider what was happening in the East Coast in New York, you had
It's that cynicism of the
porn was a big thing at the
yeah,
time. I think there's a couple songs that kind of go there,
yeah,
and a bit, and just sort of the sort of creepy nature of that lifestyle, and all that and that's how when I think of when I hear something like those shoes, or
yeah,
I immediately go to, I think about like, it's when like those kinds of movies, the smut movies, were leaving theaters, and it
yeah,
was now starting to be distributed on videotape and things
yeah,
like that. Like, I don't know why that image comes to mind, but it just, but yeah, you're
yeah,
right. I mean, they are
CD
commenting
underbelly.
on the
Yeah,
changing times and how, yeah,
yeah, the seediness of the business.
the decline of,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think there's,
uh,
there's that, like I said, it doesn't show in the production or in the
no,
performances, but the overall tone and lyrical content is very, that's what it has in common with Hotel California.
yeah.
Is that life in the fast lane style cynicism I pick up here
Mhm.
also, and that's why I said in the beginning that it feels like this is in the same universe. It's in the same LA, or wherever this is taking place. It seems like these two albums are. It's not a sequel. We're not making part two, but they're there. Just like I always feel like I think we said in our Heat episode that I felt like Collateral by Michael Mann takes place in the same LA
Mhm.
that takes place in, even though they have nothing to do with each other. I feel
That's
that
it.
I
Yeah.
feel these two albums kind of have that connection that and maybe because it's the personnel, maybe it's because of the arrival of Joe Walsh, and there's a particular sound that's
Mhm.
now ascribed to Eagles with the slide guitar and that commonality that they
Mhm.
were working towards, and that's why I also kind of feel is like were they meant for what would the 80s have looked like for Eagles, or were they meant to just ever be a creature of the 70s? And that was their playground, was that dark LA life, the excesses of the 70s. Was that
Yeah.
was that Eagles
Oh, I mean,
their
certainly I
playground
mean,
and where they thrived?
when you consider Henley, especially, that cynicism would move forward.
Yeah.
That would always stay
Dirty
with him
Laundry.
in his solo work. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Even right up until the end of the Innocents. I mean, there's
Yeah.
songs on there that are just, he's always, uh, you know, commenting on
And
that
he had
kind of
the
stuff too. So,
ponytail.
but Glenn Fry was just wanting to have, I think, a little fun.
Yeah.
And it is
Yeah, Sexy
where
Girl, The All-Nighter. I love that album.
the seeds were planted, though, I think, on this record. The sounds, so like I think, like we mentioned, like Fry's voice and Henley,
Yeah.
but certain songs certainly do have those vibes of what Henley would be doing.
Mm.
And you could hear some synth on this record too. Some little slight keyboards, that show through, like on like I Can't Tell You Why, and the
Yeah, they
Greeks
embrace
don't
all
want no freaks. I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
that's like. Do you think was that inspired by the Beatles? You think?
It was actually inspired by, like, the garage bands of the '60s, like Louie
I could
Louie.
see that. I mean,
It sort of
I
like that.
hear "It's Your Birthday," Happy or whatever,
Yeah.
by Beatles. It's almost it almost has the same riff, except it's one part of it that's missing. But
Yeah.
it has that but it also funnily enough, it reminds me of something that Petty would be doing with Jeff Lynne, like on
Yeah,
Full Moon Fever, like that
the,
it,
not Zombie Zoo, but, Mind with a Heart of Its Own, right?
yes, so you have something to that effect, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it has
Yeah,
that, kind of has that vibe to it. It's decidedly not Eagles sounding.
yeah,
It's a very different sound for them,
yeah.
so it's kind of jolting, and I don't know if I'm not sure if I like it or not, but it's like, you know,
It's like a
but
palate cleanser. In
yeah,
Wikipedia says the Greeks Don't Want No Freaks was written as an homage to 60s frat rock, such as the song 96 Tears by Question Mark and the Mysterians. Now,
okay,
it
yeah,
sounds nothing like 96 Tears, but they were trying to evoke that kind of fun,
yeah,
devil may care, throwaway, we don't care what the song is about, we're just trying to get a feel.
mm,
Um, which kind of clears the decks for probably one of my favorite songs on this album is The Sad Cafe.
hmm,
Very
yeah,
much. I wrote in my notes, I wrote that it's very much like The Last Resort
yeah,
from Hotel California. It's kind of that bittersweet and melancholy vocal from Don Henley. This is the kind of stuff that I like Don Henley singing.
hmm,
Is The Sad Cafe, because he can get that emotion. He gets that in this song. He gets that. I don't know what that feeling is. I don't know if it's like a longing
yeah,
that it evokes, a sadness or a loneliness. I don't know what it is, but it's almost creepy that this is the last song that they would. It would close out their album. It would close out their career, and it is very just kind of meet me at after midnight down at the Sad Cafe, and
hmm,
uh kind of looking back and reminiscing, and it's almost like they're reminiscing about their career almost, and
yeah,
uh,
I agree.
it's kind of odd or eerie.
He's very, like you say, emotive. There's a sense of, it almost sounds like, wow, this is a good songwriter here because he's telling story,
Yeah,
a good story through the performance, and Last Resort's another one, but also like, Building the Perfect Beast, probably my favorite
hmm,
solo record he did.
yeah,
There's several songs on there, like A Month of Sundays.
hmm,
I love. It's just that quiet, and then it fades right into Sunset Grill.
yeah,
Yet another song about a resort or or
yeah.
whatever, like just sort of the sadness of,
Locations, yeah,
the loneliness, or kicking in, and but
yeah,
yeah, but he does that well, very well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's what the way I like him,
Hmm.
in that
The mournful.
nostalgia. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nostalgic. It's mournful. It's
Yeah.
looking back. Uh, kind of. I don't know. It's hard to explain when you hear his vocal. You get it.
Hmm.
It
Yep.
almost sounds. There's also some innocence about the way he's looking back on things, and uh, yeah, there's just so much there. And then
Wasted Time was another
yeah,
great.
yeah, and
Another
that's
course, one of my favorites
I
too.
went back
Yeah.
today. I'm like, let me listen to The Last Resort, because
Hmm.
it kind of has the same echoes and almost the same type of vocal performance. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
it's very similar and very nostalgic and very uh, so much. Like, I can't think of anybody else I can't think of Glenn Fry doing that justice.
No.
And it's got a very, very almost plain matter of factly vocal. There's something in there I can't
Well,
explain.
that's where like we were talking about his the sound of his voice
Yeah,
comes. That's when it really comes into play,
yeah,
and you feel like it's someone you could hear, like Month of Sundays. I'm a farmer.
yeah,
That
yep,
spirit evoked. He sounds like a farmer. He sounds like somebody sitting on his front porch of his, and you all the imagery that you get from that song, the parade in town,
yeah,
the American flag, the tractors, all of that kind of stuff, what he's singing about, you see it, and
yeah.
it's through that vocal performance that it works so well.
Yeah, very much
Yeah,
kind of like "Don't
yeah,
Give Up" by Gabriel, right? It's that same kind of
yeah,
storyteller,
yeah,
but evoking it with your evoking the emotions with your vocal performance in addition to the words, right? Same
Right.
type of thing. He's trying to do the best he can for his family, and it's not easy, and he
Mm-hmm.
sees everything that's going on, and these songs are very much like that too. That kind of slice of life, but almost like it almost seems like it might be depression era type
Yeah.
stuff, or that that they're talking about,
Yeah.
um, and painting that imagery with the words, but then also using the vocal to also deliver the character of who the character that's singing the song. It's not Don Henley, it's someone
Mm-hmm.
else, right? It's this person.
I'm quite surprised that he didn't really with that kind of approach. Um, that he didn't do like soundtrack work. It would have been, I would have liked to seen him do like a movie such about
Mm,
that. Like, uh, I don't
yeah,
know. You think of like films like that about that kind of stuff, Americana type
yeah,
films, and in the past, you would think that he would have like wanted to write or lyrics and sing
yeah,
with collaborate with a great someone who does a great score,
yeah.
but have had that would have been great. I would have loved to
He
have
could have.
seen him do stuff like that.
I think, yeah, he
But
absolutely could have excelled at something like that. I think he
yeah,
could have definitely
yeah,
lent his particular talents to the right kind of project.
right. Hmm.
Um, Not Porky's
No.
but something like Birdie, like with Nicolas Cage, or something
Yeah.
esoteric like that, right? Kind of like
Yeah, somebody who knows how to write a good score, but like if it's let's say the story is about I'm thinking Days
like a
of
remake.
Heaven,
Yeah, like a remake of
the
a
Terrence
Michael
Malick
Mann.
movie where
Yeah,
it's with Richard Gere, that kind
yeah,
of imagery,
yep,
I could definitely see Don Henley collaborating with a great composer of movies and such, and
yeah.
just write lyrics to a track or two,
Great
and just
Grapes of
have
Wrath type
and
movie, like
yeah,
those types of,
and give
know,
that right,
yeah,
give it that great voice of his. Yeah, yeah,
that depression era stuff.
yeah. Because he's always talked about he's from Texas. He's always talked
Yeah.
about the lifestyle, and
And he's
so
very much
you
into
know
the environmental and
yeah,
and
mhm,
ecology things too. He's very much
right.
into being socially conscious. So yeah, you're right. I'm surprised he never. Maybe if you asked him, he might say no one ever asked.
That's true.
You know, like
That could
maybe
be
no one
true.
ever thought of him as that because he went from like building the perfect beast to the end of the innocence, and then
Yeah,
right into Eagles, and it's Don Henley, and he's really popular, and
yeah. Well,
who knows? I don't know. It could, what could have been, but
what
um,
could have been, but you look at somebody like Bruce Hornsby,
yeah,
right? He was hitting it big with the the way it is, and I love but then he just kind of faded away. But he was still making some great music. I mean,
yeah.
this his stuff is fantastic,
He became like a
and
session
I
guy again, and played for like the Dead. He played with the Dead,
played with the
and
Dead, and but he put out a couple of tremendous
yeah,
live recordings. I mean, really good stuff, and just I could definitely see somebody like him and Henley doing a whole project together, creating some really great music for a score or something like that. That would have been cool, but well,
did you hear the latest controversy with Eagles and Henley?
no, I have not.
Apparently, because people go to shows and they whip out their phones and record everything,
Okay,
that he may be lip syncing because they've
really?
got recordings from different concerts and they put it in like this spectral analyzer type thing, and they're exactly the same. And the guy's like,
Hmm.
no one sings exactly the same every night,
Yeah.
especially when it's in like one of those spectrum analyzers that has like the waveforms of the vocals. Like no one is dead on every night to
Hmm.
to the to the to that degree where it matches up perfectly. You'll hold a note shorter or longer, or end it earlier or whatever. Um,
That's
and the
disappointing.
guy, yeah, there's this YouTube channel called Wings of Pegasus, and the guy's a musician and he does music analysis. And
Yeah.
people sent him the clips, and he put it through this thing, and he shows you, goes, this is very disappointing, but it appears that he's using a backing track.
Hmm.
Now for $300 a ticket,
right?
No thanks.
And there's
if you sound like shit, it sound like shit.
There are
live.
and they are a no frills band. You're not getting a whole stage present, live show,
you're getting them
screens,
in
special effects. Yeah, they're just there in their flannel shirts or whatever. They're their bolo ties and that's it. That's what you see is what you get. So yeah, that is a little. Perhaps his voice is just not there.
And okay, well then at that point you bow and you exit.
That's right. I agree. I totally agree.
Or you don't do those songs. You don't do songs that you can't do.
Right.
They've got plenty of material to choose from, so I'm sure there's enough there. And I believe even Joe Walsh does stuff from his own career, like James Gang and stuff like that. So there's probably plenty. So it seems like they're almost like a jukebox now of doing whatever, like kind of the way Fleetwood Mac started doing that. They started doing like Stevie Nicks solo stuff. And it's like, I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, combining the two.
Yeah, if I want to hear Stevie Nicks solo, I'll go see her solo. Right. I want to hear the artist within. If I'm going to see them in a group, I'm going to see them. Like same thing. I'll call it Lindsey Buckingham. I don't need to see him go insane in a Fleetwood Mac concert. I don't. It's okay. No. Like it's fine. There's plenty of other stuff you can do.
By the same token, you don't want to hear "Go Your Own Way" in his solo.
Well, I think that's a little different because I think it flows one way, but not the other. Well, I'm okay with them pulling from that and bringing it. But when it's a group thing, I don't need to hear your solo stuff because there's so many other people in the group, right? You've got Stevie Nicks, you got Christy McVie,
see, that's the thing for me. It's when they start doing that, and then you realize, are they really a group then? Because they're not necessarily writing song. I mean, their songs are their own, so they're saying, "Oh, well, I'll sing whatever the hell I want to sing," So it's like I don't need. So where does the group come in? The group factor come into this, So that's always been kind of a thing for me. It's like they're not really building songs from the ground up together like they should be, which is it's always been a shame in a group like that.
Yeah, well, that's dynamic, but like Neil Finn, right? He replaced Lindsey Buckingham.
Yeah,
they're singing like "Don't Dream." Fleetwood Mac is doing "Don't Dream It's Over."
Yeah, I know.
Like what? Like,
and that was a request from Mick Fleetwood himself because I just love that song. I wanted him to do it. But it doesn't. It doesn't apply. It doesn't belong. But
I get it, but I don't get it. It's kind of like.
Well, but then again, you think back to when Wings Over America and Denny Lane did the Moody Blues track when he was with Moody Blues.
What go now?
Go Now, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did that. He sang it, and it's like, well, that's not Paul McCartney. It's not Beatles. It's
no,
that's another whole nother group.
I guess it's almost like a spotlight type thing. Like, oh, here's Denny Lane, and he's going to play a song for you, which is different. Because Denny Lane was never he was the guitarist.
No, I know, but the point is, like, it's a song that is it just because Don't Dream is a hit that it needs to be played because this guy is now playing with Fleetwood Mac, and it's I think Mick Fleet was just no, I just like the song. I love that song means a lot to me, and like, well, okay,
I'm sure it does.
All right, so let's bring back Dave Mason and who else is going to come to the turnstile and play with Fleetwood Mac? It's a free for all at this point.
It means a lot to you because if you don't let him do it, he's not going to stay. That's why it means a lot to you financially because if you don't let him do his song, he's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And there's actually an article recently about him talking about because Crowded House has a new record out, and he's talking about I was getting a lot of evil eyes from like the Lindsey Buckingham fans, like in the audience, like, which is but we're not here to talk about that. But they are the bandmates of Eagles. They're all in that same graduating class in the 70s. Is there any most critics kind of say Teenage Jail is the miss. If there is a miss on this album, it's kind of like Teenage Jail really sounds thrown together. I don't have really a problem with it. I kind of like it. It's got a dark feel to it, and
yeah,
it's got an interesting vocal to it. So, I'd say if you're gonna throw something away, it's the Greeks Don't Want No Freaks. But there's nothing.
I agree. I totally agree with that one.
But there's nothing wrong with that song on its own.
No, it doesn't quite fit.
Yeah,
I think I think that's Henley and Fry. Like if that's clearly their like, oh, we love rock and roll kind of thing. That kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it just feels a little schlocky to me. I don't know. Given the mood of the album and just maybe they're just trying to lighten it up a bit. I don't know, but
yeah, like I said, I think it's a palate cleanser for the Sad Cafe.
Yeah,
I think you get that rollicking song, and then everything settles back in, and the album closes out. And if it's got a place, it's perfectly placed as the second to last song. Like kind of Clear the Decks, and then almost kind of like Songbird by Christine McVie. Like Sad Cafe is kind of almost like that, kind of like this lonely song that kind of closes out the record. But for me, I'll go with the three most re-listenables would be In the City, Heartache Tonight, and Long Run. But I love the Sad Cafe just because of what it evokes. But those are like and especially more recently, I've really gotten into In the City. Like I've really come to appreciate.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of dismiss Joe Walsh as like this crazy loopy guy or whatever, but no, he's this very skilled guitarist, as is Don Felder. They're both. It was like a 1-2 punch in different ways. But yeah, I've gotten deep into that.
For me, the first 3 tracks are killer. I mean, it's just and maybe the songs just slightly move away from that greatness but they're good song. I mean, King of Hollywood, I mean, it's the longest song on the record, and it, like you say, it's the darkest. Those Shoes I like a lot. I think it's fun. Beastie Boys would sample that, that bass line and I just, I don't know. When I first heard the song, I thought it was kind of cheesy. But again, I mean, it's very much a product of that of 79.
It's got that dirty feeling to it, that with the what the hell's it called now? The tube that he puts in his mouth. When he does the What is
Sad
it called?
Cafe?
Why am I losing
Music
words?
Box? Yeah, the whole Vox Box. Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
there we go. I think we got it close enough.
Yeah. Sad Cafe I mean, it's a great, I like it, but it to me, it's very reminiscent of Last Resort.
Yeah.
So I think because I love that one, this one just feels like it's in that same.
Yeah, it's definitely in the same wheelhouse. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think this is at the time, reviews were mixed. 7 million copies out the door. I don't think you're going to argue with that.
No.
Again, a group that did as well. I mean, I forget what Hotel California was. It was what, 11 million or 10
ridiculous
million? Like Hotel California was 26 times platinum.
Yeah.
So yeah, is 7 times not quite that, sure, but 7 times is a lot. And it's odd that a band again just kind of goes out on a high. That's a high note. And poor Timothy B. Schmidt, he's probably like, I'm hired into the Eagles and then their biggest album, and then nope, that was not to be. It's like hold the phone. Record scratch. No, you're gonna get one record, but now he's on for one record, but he's considered part of like the classic lineup. Oddly enough, like Randy Meisner, even though he's no longer with us, he kind of got the short shrift in all of this.
Yeah,
it's kind of like Timothy B. Schmidt is in the Eagles. It's like, yeah, but he was really only in for one album.
I think it's a strong album. I'm not sure though it's quite the career closer that, and I feel like they could have done. You
Yeah.
know, they could have. I think they could have done something as big, maybe bigger than Hotel California,
Mm.
had they, got, just got their shit together and just said, this, and carried on. It's a shame. It really is. But
Yeah,
but
and
I
imagine
felt like,
that the group is on the verge of breaking up. They were sick and tired of each other, and they put this out.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a testament to their professionalism, is really what it is. That
true.
they were
That's
able
true.
to, like we said, hide all these warts and all these scars, and deliver something, and then afterwards, kind of like the Beatles, kind of.
Yeah.
The Beatles always put their best foot forward, always tried to put their best face forward, even though whatever the internal, like back then, again, a lot of people didn't know that how many times Ringo quit and George quit, and
yeah,
because they would just put out material that was magnificent that would fool you into think that everything's happy, everything's
fine.
happy.
Yeah,
and this is the same thing. It's kind of like, here's another great album. They got a new bass player. Here's more hits. We're going to keep rolling. Was not to be, and I think they regret it. I think they probably, Henley and Fry kind of regret, especially like Glenn Fry was done with everything. He just walked away from everybody.
Yeah,
I think you're right. Like a little break in between, but again, it wasn't the norm. It wasn't how the business was run. You were expected, and that's why I think that's probably why everyone got into drugs too. It's just to power your way through this stuff, because you had a tour and party and interviews and magazines and then TV and then go back into the recording studio. And the only way to cope was probably just to self-medicate,
but yet comment on it at the same time. I think that takes balls. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and Fleetwood Mac and Eagles did that very well. Yeah. Just laying it out there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
but like I said, I feel like they really could have done something, but maybe they already did. Maybe Hotel California was that big moment. But
was this their Tusk?
Not so much Tusk,
right? I mean, because you're saying you wish they had come out with something bigger or better, but did they have the desire to? It's kind of like that was.
Well, I mean, yeah,
it was big.
I mean, they came out with that one record that was so forgettable. I mean, Long Road to Eden, and that was a double record.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, it's a long album, as I recall.
I didn't bother.
And it just the chemistry just wasn't there. It was very bland, it didn't sound, it sounded like Eagles, but it wasn't, none of the songs had that. And when they did try to do something a little bit more rocky, it was just so cheesy. Like the couple of songs that they did for the, Hell Freezes Over, I didn't care for it.
I liked Love Will Keep Us Alive. Get Over It was a little.
Get Over It is what I'm, that to me was very schlocky. And
Love Will Keep Us Alive by Timothy.
Well, that's because Paul Carrick wrote it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So they didn't even write it. Paul Carrick wrote it.
Don't shed a tear for Paul Carrick.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it for Long Run. What do you think? I think we're, I think it is a fitting end because it ended so unceremonious.
You know what? You're right.
It's an unfinished footnote in their career.
It's a fitting end to what maybe we always wanted more, but when you look back on it, it's fine.
Yeah, we
have this record, and it's one of the more nostalgic records for me. Yeah. Heartache Tonight, sitting in the pizza parlor on a Friday night. I mean, that song on the jukebox. I mean, come on,
that song over and over. I could listen to Heartache anytime. I'm probably gonna turn it on and blast it. Actually,
there you go.
Because it is one of the. They were so damn good at what they did.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about music is getting to enjoy, talk about it, and reflect it, and then it makes you realize, or it makes you kind of understand again. It's like, wow, it was a time of excess and a lot of rough things, but what a magical time it must have been too, just to have all that creativity with Linda Ronstadt out there and Jackson Browne and Fleetwood Mac and Andrew Gold and J.D. Souther, just all these artists co-mingling, Warren Zevon, just everybody kind of co-mingling together in this communal thing. Everybody working towards the same goal, but doing it in their own way. Everyone had their own sound, but they would all write songs. J.D. Souther wrote songs for everybody. Whoever needed a song, he'd write for. Andrew Gold, same thing. It's like, so what a magical time. And just the output that we got is I think it's unparalleled in the 70s. I just think but again, that was the work ethic. So there were a lot of casualties as a result of that. Is like I said, that work ethic of the 70s was label, record, hit, record, hit. And we need another one. This one's, on its way down the charts. When's your next album coming out? And that album was supposed to be out in 77 or 78. And it was taking so long that Warner Brothers said to the group, we'll give you $1 million bonus if you can get this out by Christmas, by December of 1978. If you can get this album out, we'll give you $1 million bonus. Like we need this material. And it still didn't come out till like a year later. Even a $1 million bonus couldn't spur them into getting through, because it was just for them, it was a slog. It was a chore to get through it, but you would never know. It does not sound like it whatsoever. So we invite you to listen to this. A good double play. Listen to Hotel California, then listen to the Long Run. I think they're probably the two Eagles albums that are best paired together. Right? It's kind of like what goes with a good wine. It's kind of like Hotel California and the Long Run. Just you can listen to them back to back and get a lot out of it. But that's going to do it for this episode. So thanks for joining us. If you made it this far and you haven't liked and subscribed on YouTube, go ahead. You're being very naughty. Do that right now. We're going to wait for you to do it. Thank you. And if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast provider, go ahead and follow us there as well, so you make sure that you get notified when new episodes come out, because they do come out each and every week, and we give you a varied look at the music and movies that shaped Eric and my life as well. And we're gonna put the lid on this one. It's the end of the Long Run for us. So Eric's going to be on that very comfy couch. I'm going to be in this very uncomfortable green IKEA.
So sad. Why did you have to say that?
What? Why? What's so sad about it?
It's just so sad. Oh, it's the end of the Long Run.
The end of the Long Run.
Still got some.
It's the end of it's the end of this long run, but we've got more runs to go. We've got plenty that we're going to be bringing you.
That's better.
Gladly. Yep. But yeah, follow us on wherever you are. You can check us out on Instagram and Facebook as well. If you want to interact with us directly, we've got a great community there. You can go check out what's going on there. So for Eric, this has been Dean. We will absolutely catch you on the flip side.